Hey fam, Josh White here. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for joining us, for spending time with us, me and my friend Victoria Baldwin, on today's part 2 of our resiliency series. Now, a few weeks ago, if you joined us, Victoria, otherwise known as Tori, ran us through the tragic event of the phone call that she received from her stepmother that changed her life forever. You see, in that phone call, Tori found out that her 5-year-old brother Gabe was killed at the hands of her own father, who was struggling with mental illness, and practically overnight not only lost the life of her brother, but lost the relationship with her own father, who is now basically in prison for life. As we roll into the second part of this resiliency series, you are going to learn the tools that Tori developed to get through it. You see, when she returned to work 10 days later after going to her little brother's funeral, she was a shell of a person. She didn't know how to pick up the pieces. Before she left, she was one of the leading tech sergeants at her base. Upon return, she was barely keeping it together and starting to isolate. Where did she go from there? How did she pick up the pieces? This is the valuable information that she shares with us on this episode. On top of that, we hear the incredibly inspiring journey that Tori went on to get 2 of her sisters out of foster care. For over a year, her sisters were in the system. After a year of the courts playing with their emotions, Tori finally got confirmation that she was now their legal guardian and parent. We hear about this new family that she practically gained overnight. And we're going to start this episode off with showing you the video of Tori surprising her 2 sisters and her biological son with the news of the adoption. It is an absolutely heartwarming and beautiful video that I cannot wait to share with you. And as a bonus, if you wait till the end of this episode, I am going to read some of the incredible reviews that y'all have been leaving me on HeroFrontPodcast.com or on Apple Podcasts. Incredible, beautiful things said about the show that I just want to start sharing. So hey, one of the reviews that you left might be at the end of this episode, so stay tuned for that as well. All right, y'all, let's get after it.
It does say, the court, having heard the evidence thereon and being fully advised of the premises, find that the allegations of the petition are true, and the court consents to the adoption of Lily Emick Pitt Baldwin and Naomi Carolyn Baldwin.
Lily.
On this day.
My birthday or today?
Today! You're adopted. I adopted you.
We're no longer foster kids yet. Now we are taking the team fighting. I don't want to hurt somebody. My new name sponsors of how much I can attack.
That means you get to say it.
My new name sponsor. You know what my new name is about?
And so let's go into the aftermath, and there's a whole other side of your story. And that whole other side is that when your father was incarcerated, suddenly there was a caretaker issue with your many siblings that you have, a few of which were rather young, and it wasn't really clear where they were going to land and who was going to take care of them. And it suddenly came to you that you could potentially be that person. These were your sisters. They needed someone. And I was hoping you could run us through just the aftermath, going back to work emotionally. How did that feel? How did you get through the day-to-day? And then also the path of being the parent of your sisters.
I went to Indiana. I didn't make it in time to say goodbye to Gabe, but we planned the memorial service, had the memorial service, the burial, all those kinds of things. So I was gone for 10 days, went back to Alaska, and I was a shell. I was probably barely a person. Barely functioning. Functioning is probably an overstatement. I went from that February, my EPR had closed out and I got the coveted promotion statement. So I went from being at JBEAR for 10 months and earning that promotion statement, one of the top 2 promotion statements available. So I was that level of performing to barely functioning. I would get up and go to work, but I was barely meeting the standards, definitely not exceeding them. I didn't know how to cope. I went to mental health, and the provider, I very much appreciate her, but at the time, I remember, I think it was my second session, and I had done probably nothing but cry after telling her what happened. And she was very honest and said, I don't know how to help you. I don't know how to help you navigate through this. And I said, can I have a referral to a grief counselor, someone who specializes in this kind of thing? And so that's what happened. She gave me a referral to a grief counselor, and that kind of helped to set me up on moving through the grief of losing my dad and my brother. But I was operating 24 hours at a time. I would come to work and I would do the work and I would go home. And at the time, I just had my one biological son, and I co-parent with his dad. So Bruce had recently gone to his dad's house just before everything happened with my brother. So he would spend a few months with me and a few months with him because he wasn't school age at this time. And so we just, made it work. And so I was alone, essentially. I would go home to an empty house. And I think being alone with your thoughts when you're suffering that kind of trauma and that kind of loss can be really dangerous, because you can just kind of go down a rabbit hole. And I think that's what happened with me. I didn't know how to cope. I didn't know how to get through it. And so I just took it 24 hours at a time. And it was sad. It was hard. And one of my friends from work had invited me to this veterans group. They would meet once a week and kind of just share whatever they were struggling with that week. And so I would go to those meetings, and that group like helped to keep me moving forward. They would reassure me. They would tell me, how inspired they were, or how strong I was, or just whatever. It was like just enough to get me through until the next week when I need to go back. As far as work, I self-isolated. I can look back on it and see I was self-isolating, but in the moment I was trying to cope. And so I remember always describing it as me 50 feet of glass and everyone else, because I just felt like I was the girl whose dad killed her brother, and no one wanted to make me cry. People are afraid when you suffer loss and people know about it, they're afraid of saying the wrong thing because they don't want to make you cry. They don't want to make you sad. And so because they're so afraid of that, they say nothing at all. And from their perspective, they're doing the right thing, because if you wanted to talk about it, you would bring it to them, and they don't want to hurt your feelings, and they don't want to make you sad because you seem like you're doing really well and you seem like you're happy. And so they don't want to mess that up. But from someone who was suffering through that grief, it was that no one cared. That's how I felt. That's not
Isolating.
what it was, but that's how I felt. I felt like no one cares that I lost my brother. No one cares that I lost my dad. No one cares about me. And that's what I felt for a really long time.
I mean, most people don't have the tools to be comfortable even asking those questions, right?
Yeah.
Like I didn't for many years too. It's scary for anyone to embark on that, even though in our heart we know it might be the right thing to do, right? Is to talk about it. And now knowing that now, I make it a point to, if I know someone's going through something, I think it's so important for us to get out of our comfort zone to be there for them, because they don't want to ignore it or bottle it up. They don't want to feel more isolated. So the right thing to do is actually to make them feel comfortable, and you both kind of have to be vulnerable to make that connection and to really talk about it. Yeah. Like I mentioned earlier, I really love quotes. And so one of the quotes that I really clung to is grief shared is grief divided. And that makes it easier to carry. And joy shared is joy multiplied. And so through my loss, I've learned to ask people when I learn of their loss. If someone may be in passing, I had a coworker recently who
I had been texting about some work stuff, and they said, okay, like I'll follow up with you when I get back from some unexpected leave. My wife's mom has passed away. And immediately, of course, I was like, I'm so sorry for your loss. Like, I send my condolences. Please let me know if you need anything. And, you know, they appreciated it. They went and they did their leave, and they came back, and I just happened to be walking up down the hallway, and I saw them, and I stopped, and I immediately backed up, and I said, how's your wife? Are you doing okay? And they just opened right up. And they, thank you so much for asking. Yeah, we're doing okay. And they shared their experience, but it was through my own loss that I learned it was okay to stop and say, how are you doing? How is your wife? Are you doing okay? Do you need anything? Like, very asking those pointed questions of, you know, how are you navigating this loss? And that person, I would say they're my friend now. I mean, I see them at work all the time, and we have, you know, a great, you know, working dynamic or whatnot. But I feel like if I hadn't acknowledged their loss in the way that I did, I don't think we ever would have gotten there. We probably never would have, you know, been anything more than like, hey, how's it going? But now it's, you know, high fives and fist bumps and,
Yeah. I mean, you could have been the only one at
So
work that even asked the question. You don't, I mean, we don't know. You could have been.
you never know. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But like I said, it was through my loss and seeing it from a healthy perspective, because in the moment that I was going through it, it certainly wasn't healthy. It was coping and living day to day, and seeing it from a very dark perspective. But seeing it from that dark perspective actually led me to the decision that I was going to get out of the military. And I had gotten the job as the FTech NCOIC, and I did love that, but I just was tired, and I still wasn't at the best place. I was getting to a better place, but I just was like, you know what? I've done my 10 years at this point, and I'm ready to try something new. You know, I can go to school, and maybe I'll transition to the Guard. And I started working that perspective. My boss was super supportive, you know, sent me to TAPS, was helping me get like a LinkedIn set up. I was on my way. I was going to separate the military in May of 2018. Like, that was the plan. And May of 2019. And it was 4th of July. And I was camping in Alaska. My sisters had been in foster care. So I had 3 sisters, like you mentioned. They were all very young. So my brother Gabriel, he was 5 when he was killed. And so my other 3 sisters, like I have 7 of them, but the 3 youngest sisters were 3, 7, and 12, I think, if memory serves at the time. And so they had been placed in foster care, and every state has its own isms when it comes to the child intervention services and child protective services. And so in that particular state, they had a statute that the children needed to be out of the care of their biological parent for, I think, 18 of 24 months. And other than that, if that threshold hadn't been met, then their state law requirement was that reunification is what they call it. Reunification was the first goal. So reuniting the children with their biological parent, in this case, my stepmother, their biological mother. But along with reunification comes milestones. So plans get developed, and you know, a parent has to progress through those milestones with the goal of reunification. And if after 18 of 24 months, circumstances have changed, those goals aren't being met, et cetera, then the state at that point has a case where they can pursue termination of parental rights, and then adoption would be the primary goal. And so I was camping 4th of July, 2018, and I got a phone call from the social worker, and she said, the state is going to pursue termination of parental rights. You've been asking since this happened to adopt the girls, and now we're at the point where we can consider that. Do you want to be the number one choice? Do you want to adopt them? And it was not a debate. I didn't hesitate. I didn't think about it. I didn't say, let me call you back. I was literally laying on an air mattress in a tent, and I said, yeah, of course. And I went back to work the next Tuesday, and that same boss who had just sent me to TAPS and helped me get my LinkedIn set up was helping me draft a memo to extend my DEROS, to extend my enlistment, and to apply for base housing to get into a home to be able to foster my sisters, because I lived in a 3-bedroom home at the time that was big enough for me and my son. But in order to accept 3 more children into my home, I needed to have a place, for them to live. So I had to move. And I mean, it was a whirlwind. That was July. By the end of September, I think, I was moving into a house on base that had 4 bedrooms. So enough to be able to house all 4 of the kids that I would be caring for. And I mean, the community really it was incredible. They came together. People held fundraisers. People donated furniture. People donated food, gift cards, helped me to trade in my vehicle and get one that was big enough to be able to carry 4 kids, 3 of which were going to be in booster seats or car seats. And I got licensed as a foster parent through the state of Alaska. I mean, did everything. And December of 2018, I flew to Indiana and picked the kids up, and we flew back to Alaska, and I became a foster mom to my sisters.
It's like something out of like a movie, like
it was crazy.
It's crazy that you actually lived like what movies are based on. You know what I mean? Like fictional stories where.
Wild.
So suddenly you went from a very small family to a very large family, kind of in the blink of an eye.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was crazy. And, people will say like, well, what's it like being a parent to your sisters? And I feel like now we're in a better place, but keep in mind, this was, literally overnight, I became a mom to 4 kids, one of which had exceptional medical needs. She has cystic fibrosis, so a disease of the lungs and the GI tract. And think about how you love your siblings. And then if you have children, think about how you love your children. And it's not any better or any worse, but it's just different. You just love them differently. It just feels different. But when you are fostering and parenting your sisters, you can't do that. You can't love them differently than your own child. And so it was absolutely a challenge. I prepared as much as I could, but it would never have been enough. Think about, you have children, think about when you were going to become a dad. Like, you can read the books and you can go to the classes, but until you're actually holding this baby, you're not ever really prepared for it. And so it was very similar to that. We went to counseling every single Saturday for like 4 hours. Every Saturday we would go to counseling, because it would be, I'm there with the counselor, and then we talk about what happened that week. And then one of the children would go in and they'd have their session, and then I would go in and we'd have a small group session, and then kind of rinse and repeat for 3 more kids. So it was quite literally, that's where we'd spend our Saturdays for more than a year. That's what we did. And just as much as I had to learn how to interact with them more as a caregiver role and a parental role, they had to also learn to see me not as the cool big sister that I had always been. I'd always been the big sister that when I would visit, let's go to the movies, and let's go shopping, and let's go to dinner, and like do the fun stuff. But it's not quite as fun when I'm telling you to clean your room, or when I'm telling you to do your homework or take out the trash or whatnot. So it was a learning curve for sure.
Wow. Holy cow. I can't even imagine that. Like, they all have their own personalities, their own lives. They're in school. They got homework now. Like, like it's not. And
they've moved across the country too. We went from Indiana to Alaska.
That's a whole. They're basically overseas now, meeting all new friends and living in a new house and new everything for everyone.
Yeah. Yep.
That is very, very tough.
Wild.
Okay, so one of your sisters, the one she had cystic fibrosis. So how did that play out? Because that's a pretty serious condition.
Yeah, so that was really tough. So cystic fibrosis, for anyone that doesn't know about it, It's a disease that most predominantly affects the lungs, but it also affects like your internal organs. You don't absorb nutrients the same way that, you know, an otherwise healthy person would do. But CF is a genetically inherited disease. Both parents have to be carriers of the CF gene in order for you to have cystic fibrosis. And so we didn't know it ran in our family until our sister came along, and she was not progressing as a newborn would. And so they did testing, and then they realized she's got cystic fibrosis. And so that comes with, in her case, it was medical treatments, breathing treatments that would happen anywhere from 2 to 3 times a day. Along with those breathing treatments, there were, she had to wear a special vest that would pound on her chest from 4 sides and help break up the mucus. So cystic fibrosis creates this kind of like sticky, salty substance in your lungs and in your internal organs, can kind of like fuse them together. And so you have to have a very strict treatment routine, lots of doctor visits every single month. And then if you are around anyone who has the sniffles, of course, you're more susceptible to illness. And a common cold in one child could land my sister in a hospital with cystic fibrosis. So I was, a parent overnight to 4 children, one of which had exceptional medical needs. And so my life overnight became about everyone but me. And you had to have a very strict schedule, bedtime routine, morning routine, getting the kids to school, dinner time, bath time, all these kinds of things had to be very regimented. And that can be really challenging, because how are you going to, as one person, give individual care to each kid and make them feel special and loved and wanted, while also trying to help them navigate the feelings of, the continued loss. Because at this point, our dad hadn't been sentenced. And, now they're in a foster placement where adoption is the goal. And up until then, it had not been adoption. So they're adjusting to, okay, this could be permanent. And so there's lots of moving parts. And then you add in, exceptional medical needs, and it can just become more and more challenging. And so my sister, she had grown up, her life, everything had been about her, where the family could go because she could get sick, or where the family can't go because she just got sick, or where the family needs to go because she's got a doctor's appointment. And so, but it caused a lot of friction. After 10 months of doing the best I could, I had to call the social workers up and say, my sister, she needs someone who can focus on her. I've got 3 other kids I have to care for. I'm doing my best, and I can't give her what she needs and what she deserves, because she's a child. She deserves to be cared for and loved, and she deserves to have, this extra attention to help her recover from the loss that I, as an adult, struggled with. So I can only imagine what it was like for her as a child. But we were moving closer and closer to adoption, and I was realizing she needs more than what I can give her. I'm one person with 4 kids, and she needs someone who can pay her the utmost attention and not have to split their attention between 3 kids. And I might be explaining it poorly and making it sound like much more simple than it was, but it was an absolutely excruciating decision to come to, because as the oldest of my father's kids, I always had been the caretaker, and I'd always been the hero, for lack of a better word, who showed up and saved the day and helped ease the frustration and helped ease the burden and helped patch things up and put them back together. And then here I was, our father's in jail, and my siblings are in foster care, and I'm trying desperately to put everything back together, and I can't do it. And it was one of the most excruciating phone calls I had to make, to admit that I couldn't do it, that I couldn't be the hero that I felt she needed, and that I couldn't be the person to save her and put it all back together. And the social workers recognized that, and they worked with me and with her to find her a new placement. And again, I might be making it sound much more simple than it was. It was not an easy process.
No, it sounds hard. I mean, you went through all that to get them there, and then there's extra issues and struggles that you just didn't foresee, that are, I can't even imagine like being in that position. That is tough.
Yeah. Yep. And so after 10 months, that's what they decided to do, was to, place her with another family. And so unfortunately, she's still in the foster system. And that's really sad because it's been almost 5 years now, and she has not found a permanent home yet, a permanent place to call home. And that's really challenging, to be in a foster care system and to never really have a sense of stability and always wonder, is this going to be forever, or am I going to have to move again? And it makes it really tough to move forward. And you kind of feel like a piece of property, is what my oldest described it as. She felt like she was, as a ward of the state, she felt like she was a piece of property. And so when I read the adoption decree, that was the biggest sense of relief that she would say, would talk about afterwards, and just say like this is forever, this is permanent now. And it's just a relief. But yep. So after 10 months, my middle sister got placed with another family, and I continued to move forward with the fostering to adopt the other two girls.
So that video of you reading that announcement, like at what point did you read that? Like, were they already in Alaska when you read that?
Yeah. So when I read we moved, I flew down to Indiana in December of 2018 and picked the kids up and flew back to Alaska. And then I fostered them for the entire year of 2019. And it was in October of 2019 that I relinquished the custody of my middle sister. And by that point, the adoption hearing had been rescheduled twice. Going into the year 2020, it had been rescheduled twice. And so I got word, I think early January, that January 22nd of 2020 was going to be the next hearing. So this is going to be our third one. And because it had gotten rescheduled twice before, I didn't tell the children about it, because I could see the disappointment. They talked about the disappointment when it had gotten rescheduled, and the fact that they just were worried about, is this going to be forever? Am I going to be moved again? And is something going to happen? And it was just kind of a sense of uneasiness the whole time. So I didn't tell them about it. And I just kept it business as usual. The foster parents who had the girls before I got them, I was still in contact with them, and still am in contact with them now, years later still. But they had kind of just been keeping me up to speed. And so they said, we're going to go, and we're going to go to the hearing, and we'll update you. We'll let you know if anything changes, if it gets rescheduled, whatever. And so I was like, okay, cool. So I go to work. I'm, working information system stuff all day long. And they called. I got the phone call, and they said the judge signed everything. They're yours. And I cried at work. I was so happy. It was like such a relief. Finally, it was done. It was a chapter closed. And so
it was kind of like your first good news too, right? Like you haven't,
oh my gosh.
like you're kind of like waiting for something positive to like happen to you at this point.
Yeah. There's a lot of good things that happened along the way. It was great to get the girls to Alaska and to feel like we were a step towards healing. And it was, these little milestones that would happen along the way. But yeah, that was a big moment. And so I had been posting on social media. I was like, okay, we had a lot of people invested. We've got family all over the country. And so a lot of people were really excited to hear that. And so I said, I'm going to live stream it tonight, Facebook Live. I'm going to read the adoption decree. And so that's what I did. I set the camera up very poorly, which I didn't know at the time. I thought I had like more of a view than what I ended up having. But my son and I, we share the same birthday, and our birthday is January 26th. And so it was just a couple days away. So this was January 22nd. And so, yeah, I got all the kids downstairs under the guise of talking about birthday plans for my son and I. And so we were sitting there at the table and I was just, oh, what should we do? Oh, let's look up Dave and Buster's. And I was just finding these random things to try to like get the nerve up. And then, yeah, that's what I ended up doing. I just said, oh, I've got one more thing here. And I start like reading the decree saying that the adoption is finalized that day. And so they started, jumping up and down and yelling, we're no longer foster kids. And my son is like, I have sisters. And, but you're my aunt, but you're my sister aunt. And they're just having a fun time with it. But yeah, that's what ended up happening.
Yeah, that looked like a
And it was
really
done.
special moment, when you read that to them. That was really cool to see.
Yeah.
But as we're ending it here, I wanted you to speak on the RAKs for Gabriel, because I thought that was such a cool thing.
Yeah, so the RAKs for Gabriel. So RAKs is an acronym, stands for Random Acts of Kindness. And I have always been kind of an altruistic person. I've always just, since I was a kid, loved just doing things for other people, volunteering, donating, like whatever. It just brought me a lot of joy. And so in 2018, I think it was before I got the kids in my care, I was just driving home one day and I was like, man, it would be like, I don't want people to forget about Gabe. I don't want people to forget about this loss that we've endured, but also a loss that is unfortunately not unique. So many children are victims every year, and it's a taboo topic. People don't want to talk about mental health. It's getting better, but people don't want to talk about mental health, or people don't want to talk about abuse because they're afraid. And I understand all those reasons, but I was just found myself thinking like, I don't want Gabe to be forgotten. And so I came up with the concept of doing random acts of kindness. And so I got business cards that just say, please accept this random act of kindness, gifted in loving memory of my brother, Gabriel James Baldwin. And I would just do little things. And I would just say, I'd go through the Starbucks drive-through and I'd be like, hey, can I buy the coffee behind me? And would you give them this card? Or I bought some school supplies and did like a school supply fundraiser for some local schools in Alaska, in Anchorage, and just went and dropped backpacks off that had a pair of shoes and, paper, notebooks, folders, pencils, markers, whatever. And I just would go to the school office and say, you make the decision on who needs this, on who would be most appropriate, but I just want to drop this off. And I would just do that. And I would give this card. And people, again, one thing that I've learned from this has been community, the power of community. And so people came together and they said, how can we help? What can we do? And so I got a second set of cards made that just say, please accept this random act of kindness, gifted in loving memory of Gabriel. So we've got some for us and some for other people. And that's what we do, is we just send 5 cards to anyone. We've got a Facebook page that's set up now and an Instagram. And if people want to support RAKs for Gabriel, they can send a message to the RAKs for Gabriel page. And all we need is their name and address. And we'll send 5 cards to them, totally free. We don't expect anything in return. And it just also a little fact sheet that kind of explains what a RAK is. And then people go and do nice things for other people in Gabe's memory. And so one of the things we do is the same week of his birthday, we buy birthday cakes and we share that on social media. And so other people do that too. So I've gotten some cool messages this week from Alaska. One of my friends in Alaska did the same thing. He went and anonymously paid for a birthday cake for someone else. And so that was really nice. But yeah, that's what we do. Random acts of kindness for Gabe.
I saw a few of the random acts of kindness, and it's absolutely beautiful program that like you've created. You've taken something sad and tragic about your brother Gabriel, and you've made it into, to remember him by in this beautiful way. I absolutely am just so impressed with just the creative ways that you kind of found love in this tragic situation. It's very, very heartwarming and inspirational to see where you've taken it.
Well, like I said, grief shared is grief divided, and joy shared is joy multiplied. And so that's the concept that kind of has kept pushing me forward. And I'm a master resiliency trainer. And one of the things that we learned about when I was going through that course was meaning making, and finding everyone's meaning is going to be different, but that was my meaning making. Was I endured and survived this horrible thing, but if I can survive that and bring someone else joy in spite of this thing that could have broken me, that should have broken me, then that's what I'm going to do. And so that's what happened. And we're happy to do it. It makes hard days like today a little bit easier.
Definitely. I love the quote, by the way. Love the quote. Like we talk about quotes at work every morning. Like we'll have a random question that we ask, and tomorrow I'm bringing up favorite quotes and I'm using yours.
Well, let me know how it goes.
We're gonna exit the hero's gauntlet here with the three personal questions. Okay. And after that, we'll give like a final thought. Okay, so to exit, you're the first person to exit the hero's gauntlet. Like you're setting the bar now. Like this is new. This is just for you. And from here on out, people are going to have to exit with questions. So your first exit question is, where do you hope to see you and your relatively new, large family in 10 years? Where do you hope to see you guys?
Oh my gosh. Oh man. Well, my oldest is going to she would have graduated high school by then. So she will have decided on her career. She wants to work in social work as well. Having come from the foster system, she's very committed and motivated to try to change it for other kids. So I would imagine that she's probably pursuing that. My son, gosh, in 10 years, he would have just graduated high school. And Bruce, smart kid. I could see him working in mathematics or something, science. He's fascinated by those things. Naomi, she's 7, she just turned 8. So she also would have just been graduating high school at that point too. So I can see her, she's very creative. She's artistic. She likes to draw. So I could see her just being a creative person. Someone that is kind of like a jack of all trades, sort of making things with her hands and building things. She's got a very out of the box thinking. Me, I'll be retired from the Air Force by then. So I'll be enjoying retirement, scooping ice cream on a beach for $10 an hour and performing weddings. That's my retirement goal.
I love that. That's awesome. No, that's a great answer. Great retirement plan too. Hire me. I'll be your videographer. Okay. So, second question. When you were in your darkest moment after losing Gabriel, trying to get custody of your sisters, you said you hit that, you felt like there was that 50 feet of glass between you and the world and you kind of were hollowed out. What message would you send yourself back then? Would you say anything to yourself back then that would have helped you? If the future self that you now in the present could say something to Tori going through that hard time?
I would say the cure for the pain is in the pain. And for a while, I tried to avoid the loss, processing the loss that I experienced. And I tried to just kind of package it up and put it away and move through life. But I had to go through the pain to get through the pain, to come out the other side. And so that's what I would say. The cure for the pain is in the pain.
So it's normal to feel that way. It's a total normal reaction. And to get through it, you have to deal with it. You have to face it. You have to talk about it. You have to own it. No, I love that. I've tried to avoid it. We've all tried to run from it, avoid it, stuff it down. And, it all comes out one way or another.
Yeah.
So, okay. So we're on the last question here as we finish our talk. What do you want others to remember about your brother Gabe, and and or his situation, what would be the takeaway, his legacy that you hope brings change to the world? What does that look like?
That's a really tough question. And I feel like the first thing I thought of is that if you suspect abuse and neglect, and you find yourself thinking something doesn't feel right, or something's not right, say something, intervene. If you have the ability to intervene, do it. Don't second guess that thought, that nagging feeling. Err on the side of caution and make the call and ask the question. And if you find yourself one day wondering, what can I do? Like, what can I do to change, the life of the generation that's coming after us? Like, I would encourage you, consider becoming a foster parent, consider becoming a court appointed support for the member, or for the child, excuse me. So it's called like a CASA. So your job is to basically advocate for the child in these court hearings. And you're not interested in the state's perspective, you're not interested in the parent's perspective. Your job as a CASA is to build a relationship with that child and advocate for what is in their best interest. And I can guarantee you every single state in the United States needs more CASAs. There are not enough of them. And so if I could do anything, if Gabriel's memory could do anything, it would be just remind people, if you see something, if you suspect something, don't be afraid to speak up, because you might save a life. And if you find yourself wanting to help kids like Gabriel, consider becoming a CASA or consider becoming a foster parent, because it absolutely makes a difference and it absolutely can change someone's life for the better.
Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being so vulnerable and transparent. And I don't know, the story touches me, because not many people could go through what you did and come out the way you did, where you've turned this tragedy into treasure for you and your sisters, and how you honor your brother Gabriel in such a beautiful way. I think it's just incredible what you've done. I think you're such a great example to not giving up and fighting your way to see the light at the end of the other tunnel, and then making things better out of this tragedy. You found ways to do it. And that's really, really hard for most people to do. Like, it almost never happens, not to the level that you've brought it to. So I just wanted to first and foremost just tell you that you are a kick-ass person. You are so impressive, such a good heart, to take your sisters in the way you did, to save their life the way you did. And then the beautiful ways you find to honor your brother Gabriel is incredible. It's nothing short of incredible what you've done, the way you share a story, his legacy, to take his unfortunate, terrible situation that happened, and then finding some way to destigmatize it and bring love to people's life and kindness into people's life, while at the same time educating them on what happened to Gabriel in a way that they don't deflect, because you understand that there is a stigma, but you found a way around that. And just the way you've embraced your story and the way you've shared it with the Air Force and now me, I just think that it's absolutely incredible. I wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being this vulnerable, having the courage to speak about it, because that's hard. It's hard to find the words. But knowing that it will change someone's life, that message will resonate with someone, and that, and you're willing to put yourself out there in the hopes that it does resonate with someone, I think speaks volumes about your character. And so just from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank you for being you, for being such a great example of turning trauma into treasure, and just being you and being that ray of light for us. So thank you so much, Tori. I appreciate you.
Well, that's really kind. And I don't take compliments very well. So if I could say anything, it would just be, I think the real heroes of the story are the kids. They've overcome so much, whether it be the girls who lost their dad and their brother, or my son who overnight learned how to share his mom with other kids. And it wasn't always easy, but he inspires me with his heart and with his ability to adapt. And the girls inspire me with their heart, their resilience, their capacity to forgive and to adapt and to take all of these circumstances that should have broken them, and instead they have built something incredible upon it. So I think the real heroes of the story are the kids, and
yeah,
I'm really proud of them.
They're pretty amazing children. And we don't give children enough credit. They can find ways to overcome the hardest things in life that would break an adult. Kids are strong.
Yeah,
they will find a way to survive, and they'll surprise us with that drive that you wouldn't expect from children. But and especially your children, they've been through so much. Incredible kids. If they're watching this, y'all kick ass too. if you're watching this, heck, your kids could be watching this 20 years from now.
Yeah, they're going places. They're going to change the world. So they inspire me, and they really help to keep me moving forward.
Absolutely. So where can we find any info on Gabriel, the stuff that you set up with the RAKs? How do we find those social media accounts and websites?
So on Facebook, it's RAKs for Gabriel, RAKS for Gabriel. We're working on a website, so that's in the process of being built, actually, and should launch in maybe 2 weeks or so. But yep, RAKs for Gabriel on Facebook is our primary method of kind of showcasing what we do and what other people participate in. So just look it up, RAKS, the word for, like FOR, not the number, RAKs for Gabriel. Our symbol is a pinwheel, because the pinwheel, if you didn't know, is the national symbol for child abuse prevention and awareness. So every April, you might see pinwheels everywhere. Very ironically, my brother was killed in the month of April, Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month. So a pinwheel is our display picture. But yeah, send a message. My sisters and I will respond, get your address, mail you 5 cards, and then if you're feeling comfortable enough to share with us what you did, then we'll just highlight it on the page so more people can see all the great things that folks do in memory of our brother.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love the picture of him too, that you show of him. You look so adorable.
He's so cute. His little bow tie.
His little bow tie, yeah. And you got... What's going on, everyone? Josh White here. And as promised, at the end of this episode, I am going to read a review after each episode going forward here, because they're just blessed my heart with how sweet these reviews have been. So I'm going to start from February 12th, 2021. This is the first review that I've ever had, and it's from Chief Master Sergeant Caleb Vaden, who has been just incredibly encouraging and supportive. He always is. He's just a phenomenal person, and I'm blessed to have him in my life. So thank you, Chief Vaden. And here's what he had to say. Josh is a solid guy and an amazing airman that gets it. Great content on the first episode, and I know there will be a lot more to come. Lead on, brother. Hey, thank you, Chief Vaden. Appreciate you, man. So going into my talk with Tori, I just want to kind of give a brief afterthought, and that is, no matter how dark your path gets, there is always hope. And Tori showed me that. I've gone through much, much less in my life, and I've wanted to give up and quit. And Tori has gone through some seriously traumatic stuff, and yet she somehow found a way to still shine that light, to keep going, and to take it one step further and adopt her own sister so that they can have a good life with her. And I just found this story incredibly inspiring, and it just kind of gave me perspective, to what I think is a struggle, and that I probably can get through it, and it's probably not as bad as I think. So she helped me get that perspective. So thank you so much, Tori, for being that beacon of hope and light to show us that there is a way through it and that it's okay to be upset. She showed me that too. One of the quotes that she had in there was something about, you have to go through it. There's no way around it. The pain, that's normal, and you have to feel it and you have to get through it. You can't avoid it. You can't skip it. You're a human being, and it's gonna be right behind you until you deal with it. And she taught me that too. That feeling upset, depressed, and down based on the situation is completely normal. And to not shame yourself or feel bad or try to tuck it away, to live in it, to get through it, to talk about it, to embrace it, and to own it. And so thank you, Tori. I appreciate that. I appreciate our talk, and I hope everybody appreciated it too and took something away from it. All right, y'all. I will see you on the next episode.